Hello, everyone. If you're watching this, it means a lot. Thank you so much for joining. I am Nilsson, founder of a software development company called Chuva. We're based in Cape Verde, the islands off the west coast of Africa. Want to present to you guys a tool that my team and I have been working on called Less. We find it totally fascinating. Um, don't want to be biased, but I hope to hear your comments and feedback, and you can tell us what you think. Um, so this is going to just be a quick, high-level overview. I'm not going to get into any code or like live demos or anything like that. Just want to get you guys to understand what Less is, how we use it, how it helps us, and hopefully it inspires you to jump in and give it a shot. We're totally confident that it will streamline the development for most people. Maybe not for all use cases, but I think for a lot of use cases it will help. And so let me jump right in. So what is Less? Less is an infrastructure from code framework that we built internally to just speed up our development process. Um, you know, code is, you have your business logic and your idea of whatever it is that your business wants to solve. And then to get that into the hands of people, you need the infrastructure aspect. So now we're talking about like cloud and Terraform, or like the AWS CDK, or CloudFormation or Pulumi, or tools like that, DevOps, etc. And with Less, we completely eliminate all of the infrastructure. Well, not eliminate, but automate. And so you literally just write your code as you normally would, and you're able to deploy that currently to AWS. We plan on adding support in the near future for Google Cloud, Azure, on-prem, and even self-hosting with Bring Your Own Cloud. Um, you're gonna have to pardon the dogs. So before I get into, actually, let me jump into the features that Less provides, and I'll give you just a brief overview of why we found the necessity to create it. So Less, everything that I'm gonna mention that's essentially like executable code currently is a Lambda function. So it is serverless, and it gives you all the benefits that Lambda and serverless will give you, such as like infinite scale, scaling to zero, um, being fault tolerant, and all that fun stuff. So Less lets you create anything from as far as like executable like code goes, REST APIs, WebSockets, PubSub using fan out architecture, cron jobs, and you can even have just like isolated cloud functions that you can execute either inside of Less, or you can call them from outside of Less using a REST API. Less supports two different programming languages right now. Well, three, but the third is not even documented yet, so you won't be able to find it in the docs yet. But we support JavaScript and Python. We just added support for Rust, although we don't have support for all features in Rust yet. And we will be adding Go and other languages as well. So something really cool with Less is that in a Less project, you can just like mix the languages up. So you can literally have like if you have a REST API, your GET request can be written in Python, and your POST request can be written in JavaScript, or um, et cetera, et cetera. Like even with like a fan out, if you're publishing messages to a topic and then you have multiple subscribers to that topic that want to process that, you can have each processor be written in a different language as well. So you can use the language that's just best tailored for the job that you have at hand. So it gives you a ton of flexibility. And then when you're looking at cloud functions in less, you can even have like JavaScript code call Python code and vice versa. So you can intermingle different languages. Let's say you have like a bunch of I don't know, SQLized models in your ORM written in JavaScript, but a use case comes along and you want to be able to use those models in Python, for example. You will be able to expose those functions as cloud functions and call them either via the API or you can just call them asynchronously in Python and vice versa. So it doesn't really matter what any language that less supports, you will be able to kind of mix and match and call functions asynchronously. We are adding synchronous support for cross language communication as well. There's just a bit of what you can do in less. And I'll give you just, if I jump into like the REST API documentation, for example, you see how it works. So you can create a project from scratch using less. You can also add less to an existing project. So let's say you have a project that already exists and you want to add a cron job to it, or you want to add pub/sub to it, which is something that we do a lot. So we have like different systems that gets to a point where we want them to be able to communicate with each other. And we'll just add like the fan out architecture feature to a project that is already existing. So that's a use case that we use primarily at Chuva with the various projects that we work on. And so how does this work? All you really need is a less folder here. So if you look at right here in the documentation, the first thing that I need to do, for example, for a REST API is create a directory called less. And that's essentially it. And then, so specifically, if I want to have a REST API, then inside of my less folder, everything kind of builds up from there. Inside of my less folder, I'll just have an APIs folder, and it is plural because less does support multiple APIs. And so in this case here, I have an API that I'm just calling it demo. So if I were to deploy my less project, one of the outputs I would have would be a URL to the demo API that I just created and deployed. And it's sits behind, just getting a little bit technical, like sits behind API gateway on AWS, and you get HTTPS by default for free. And if I could have inside of my APIs folder, I could have multiple APIs with different names, like maybe one is demo and test, or like public and private, or whatever the use case may be. It's really just a matter of whether or not you want to have more than one URL for it or not. And then inside of my demo, I want to create a route. So how do you create a route? So I just create a hello folder. So that would be equivalent to a hello route at my demo base URL. So I can hit my demo base URL, like whatever, like less dot. It ends up resolving to you have your subdomain, then it's like less.cv. So it'd be like less.cv/hello would be your route. But I have a route, but I need a verb, right? So in order to have a verb, let's say I want to have a GET request. So inside of, I have a hello route, and then I have a slash get.js. So having a get.js folder means that I have a GET request for my hello route. And in this case, it's written in JavaScript. And I could have Python as well. Right, so if I had a get.py, it would be Python. I could have like a get.js and a post.py, et cetera, et cetera. And so looking at like the JavaScript example, what do I need to do to get this working? So I just need to expose a process function, and pretty much any other feature that you see, you're going to pretty much see the same process function. What the parameters are will be different based on what it is that you're doing. So in this case, you have request and response. I think it's pretty obvious there. If it were a cron job, for example, you're not really receiving any parameters, so it would just be void. And then if you had like if you're doing like pub sub, then you would get the message that was published inside of the subscriber that you're processing. And so in this case, I have my request and response. I'm not looking into the request at all in this example, so I'm just setting up my response body. So my response body is just string hello world, and then I can return my response. And so that would return by default the 200 status code to the caller, and that's pretty much it as far as the REST APIs go. I can get into, you can see the rest of the documentation here. You can dive into that and see how to set up your status codes, your headers, your query params, and it also supports middlewares as well. You can have dynamic paths. I'll just give you guys just a brief example here. So let's say I want to have like hello and then slash hello slash an ID, or like slash hello slash name. You just put it in curly braces, and so you'll be able to access name from your request params right here, right? And so like you can really, as far as like REST APIs goes, if you get REST, you can pretty much take it from there, and you can pretty much build it up from there and do just about anything that you want to do. I'll just give so another really cool thing is that, for example, inside of my REST API, when you deploy a stack in less, so we don't really have the notion of environment. So let's say I wanted to deploy. Actually, let me go to deploy. I have the docs here, so you can use the CLI. Use CLI for just about everything, and I can just run like less CLI deploy, and I would just specify the name of the deployment. So as long as I'm inside a directory that has a less folder, I can deploy the less project. And so let's say I want to have like a QA0, QA1, stage, production. And in this case, I have it like it's my less project, right? So in the example right here. So I can do like my less project QA0, deploy my less project QA1, deploy like my less project production. And if you have your environment variables set up, those will all be hooked in and it'll deploy. And so it's super easy to get something like this. Like the code is dead simple, and there's really no learning curve as far as the code goes. You just really need to know how to set up your file structure, and that's essentially what the documentation shows you. So the documentation is super, super simple. And then once you do deploy, as I said, this is kind of your output here. You're gonna get a demo. A demo API is one of your outputs in this case, and it gives you a protected URL here with HTTPS, and then you have your whole subdomain. Then it goes to less.chuva.cv. So in this example here, they have a curl example here where I can use my base URL. So I can use like this base URL. It's just a fake URL, so it's not going to work. But I can use my base URL and hit /hello, and I'll be able to get my response there. Then here's another example using post, but same idea. I mean, what else can you do? So cron job, let's say you want to create a cron job, same kind of idea, right? You have a less directory, and then inside of less, you have crons. And then inside of crons, I have just whatever the name of my cron job is. In the case of JavaScript, it would just be like index.js. In case of Python, it's just init.py. And once again, you just need a process function. So in this case, here's an example of what the Python code would look like. Here's an example of what the JavaScript code would look like. And inside of here, you can just do whatever you want. You can, like if you're using NPM, or you have like your package JSON, your node modules, you can just import here. You're using pip or whatever, you can have like your requirements.txt or whatever, and import your dependencies in your Python code as well. So you can literally have like package JSON and your Python requirements sitting side by side, your Rust cargo or whatever, although we don't have the Rust documentation up yet, but it does support, we are adding support for Rust. We already have it for REST APIs, and we're adding it for other things at the moment. So yeah, you can mix and match different languages in the same project without like really any configuration or setup. If you want to share code between modules, because it's serverless, you need to have them isolated. So if you want to import code across different functions, for example, if you were to export a different function in your get code, you wouldn't be able to access it from your post code, for example. So if you wanna have shared code in your Less project, then you would just create a directory inside of Less called shared, and then you can just share whatever you want. So whatever's at the top level, for example, models, or I can have another thing, and so this would allow me to import models, for example. So models in JavaScript, right? I have my index.js that's probably exporting something called user, and so I can import models, and then whatever interface I have defined inside of my models module, I can just have access to it here. And I can access that from anywhere. So this is really helpful if you have an existing project and you want to start using Less. Like I gave the example of using like Sequelize or an ORM or whatever. So pretty much just like create your Less project. I mean your Less directory inside of your existing project. Create your shared and just like drag the folder into there. In your old code, you're probably just gonna have to change the directory for the imports, and that's essentially about it. And then you have access to it inside of Less anywhere. Again, we're using S3, I mean AWS, so you get file storage for free. You can import files from the Less module, whether it be Python or whatever, it doesn't matter, JavaScript. You can import files, and it gives you like pre-signed URLs for upload that you can return to a client and let them upload files directly from the browser, for example. Or you can have access. You can upload private files, public files. So anywhere where you have less executable code, or anywhere where you have less code, you can import files. You can do the same with key value store. So inside of your Less code, anywhere you are, whether it's like you can be inside of your REST API or whatever, GET requests or whatever, cron job, and you have access to a key value store for free. In this case, it's backed by DynamoDB, so you get all the benefits that gives you as well. That's it in a nutshell. I will be creating more videos, tutorials where we'll get hands-on. I'll probably do them feature by feature, and then we can also do like more complex applications. If you look at our app, if you look at the introduction, there's this really cool article here that you can check out where we outline building this this project based on microservices. So we have an order service, payment service, restaurant service, and we go through step by step how to connect all of these services. The implementation is super basic. A lot of times it's just like publishing a message and just console logging something. But you can build that out as you see fit and set up the implementation. So in this case, like the order service is publishing a message. So we're using the topic subscriber pub sub feature here. So it's publishing a message to the payment service, and then payment service does this thing and ends up publishing payment success, et cetera, et cetera. So I highly encourage you to jump into this. If you do have experience with microservices, you'll feel right at home. It's pretty easy to follow and to understand. I also encourage you guys to check out the blog. We have a couple articles there as well. An example, like when I show the REST APIs, for example, we have like, what is this, like 4 lines of code. So if you were to do the same thing in Terraform, if you wanted to deploy the same thing in Terraform, you're looking at like 150 lines of code. And that's just like all Terraform like stuff. The actual code is not that much, but when you're looking at all the infrastructure from code or infrastructure as code, then you're dealing with a lot, and you have the Terraform learning curve. You have someone on the team that understands all of that. So with Less, it's infrastructure from code. So literally, what you see here, you're able to deploy it. It's versioned, so you have version control and all that fun stuff. Setting up the CI for deployments is super simple as well. It's pretty much just like one line to deploy your code. So we really don't think it gets much easier than that. The goal is really to keep the interfaces as simple as possible. And then there is config that you can add to tailor it to your needs as far as like how long for a timeout and things like that. But we wanted to keep that like just let it be as easy as possible to get started by default, and then you can just config as you see fit. So I hope you liked it. I would love to hear your feedback, hear your comments. We use this extensively for like we started this off with like a fintech application that had like eventual consistency with different databases. So some were optimized for like we had like a ledger database that was like really poor performance on reading. And so we would observe the changes from the ledger database and then push that out into databases that were optimized for reads, for example. And then from there, sending out push notifications and things like that. And it was just a hassle for our team, even with all the AWS experience and having all the infrastructure as code already like laying around that you can just copy paste and just kind of recycle. But just a lot of work, a lot of human error, a lot of time, and then having to test that, and then having QA involved, whether automated tests or manual tests, and it was just a mess with things that just didn't add any value at all. Besides, nothing new to the business or anything like that. So less was the first feature that we built was the pub sub feature for FanOut. And then we just started taking it from there. And yeah, we've been using it in production. Like we have like hundreds of services set up with like the Jira workflow and having your tickets and your Git flow. And every time you open a pull request and whatever the branch name is in our CI pipelines, it'll take the branch name, it'll take your project and just less deploy whatever the branch name is. And so you always have an environment available, and with it being serverless, it scales to 0, so you're not paying for it anyways. And then when you're done with it, like we set up like timers and cron jobs, and we'll tear down deployments that haven't been updated, and I think we do it like once a week or something like that. We'll just destroy everything that's not being used. Or also like once something gets merged in to the main branch, it'll trigger destroying the QA environment as well. So it's super, man. It's like just like night and day difference. We really don't see it getting much better than this as far as like the time it takes to get things done and the simplicity. And so you have like junior level developers are able to jump in, create REST APIs, WebSockets, cron jobs, pub sub, fault tolerance, infinite scale, blah blah blah, like all those crazy buzzwords, and it's just like it's just code. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I'd love to hear your feedback, your comments. Check out docs.less.shuva.io. I'm gonna add some links in the description to like some press coverage that we've had. Forbes has talked about us a couple times. We're currently nominated for Most Disruptive Award with Women in Tech, which will be in South Africa in a couple weeks. It's sponsored by AWS, so we hope to get some attention there with AWS and some feedback. And if that goes well, then we'll be going to the Global Awards in Paris. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. It's been super interesting. We think it's been, it's the goal is to open doors for people that are not so experienced, but also when you are super experienced, it's kind of giving you the same kinds of stuff that you would be doing anyways by hand. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And hope to hear from you guys. Thank you.